Okay, guys, I left off when the Queen of England was making a phone call to the King of Sweden because the BFG had informed the Queen that the night before that's where the giants were. So she's trying to get her story set here. So this is actually the end of this chapter. Good morning, she said. Can I please speak to the King of Sweden? Hello. Is everything all right in Sweden? Everything is terrible, the King of Sweden answered. There's a panic in the capital. 2 nights ago, 26 of my loyal subjects disappeared. My whole country is in a panic. Your 26 loyal subjects were all eaten by giants, sir. Apparently, they like the taste of Swedes. Why do they like the taste of the Swedes? The king asked. Because the Swedes of Sweden have a sweet and sour taste. So says the BFG, the queen answered. I don't know what you're talking about, the king said, growing testy. It's hardly a joking matter when one's loyal subjects are being eaten like a popcorn. They're eating mine as well, the queen said. Who are they? For heaven's sake, eh? The king asked. Giants, the queen said. Look here, the king said. Are you feeling all right in the head, Queen? Well, it has been a rough morning, she replied. First I had a horrid nightmare, and then the maid dropped me breakfast, and now I've got a giant on the piano. You need to see a doctor, quick, cried the king. I'll be all right. I must go now. Thanks for your help, and she replaced the receiver. Your BFG is right, the queen said to Sophie. Those 9 man-eating brutes did go to Sweden. It's horrible. Please stop them, please, Your Majesty. I'd like to make one more check before I call out the troops, the queen said. Once more she looked up at the BFG. He was eating donuts now. He was popping them into his mouth, 10 at a time, like pea pods. Think hard, BFG, she said. Where did those horrid giants say they were galloping off to 3 nights ago? The BFG thought hard. Oh, he cried at last. Yes, I'll remember him. Where? Asked the queen. Well, they said they were going off to Baghdad, the BFG said. As they galloping past my cave, Flash Lumpy was waving his arms and shouting at me, I'm off to Baghdad, and I'm going to Baghdad, and Mom and every one of them 10 children as well. Once more the queen lifted the receiver. Get me the Lord Mayor of Baghdad, she said. If they don't have a Lord Mayor, get me the next best thing. In 5 seconds, the voice was on the line. This is the Sultan of Baghdad speaking, the voice said. Listen, Sultan, the queen said. Did anything unpleasant happen in your city 3 nights ago? Every night unpleasant things happening in the Baghdad, the Sultan said. We are chopping off people's heads like you chop parsley. I've never chopped parsley in my life, the queen replied. I want to know if anyone has disappeared recently in Baghdad. Only my uncle, Caliph Harun al-Rashid, said the Sultan. He disappeared from his bed 3 nights ago with his wife and 10 children. There he is, cried the BFG, whose wonderful ears enabled him to hear what the Sultan was saying to the queen on the telephone. Flesh lumpy that did that one. I went off to Baghdad. As Baghdad and Mom and all the kiddies. The queen replaced the receiver. That proves it, she said, looking up at the BFG. Your story is apparently quite true. Summon the head of the army and the head of the Air Force immediately. And that's the end of that chapter. The next chapter I'll read to you is titled The Plan.